Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino, and today I have a special guest. His name is Andrew Pek. Hey, Andrew.
Hey, how are you, Cesar?
I am doing good. Thank you for being here today. Before we get started, let me introduce you and give our listeners and viewers a little bit of your background. So, Andrew, known as the Consultants of Consulting, is an internationally recognized executive advisor, entrepreneur, and best-selling author in the field of creativity, innovation, and design thinking. He has coached and educated thousands of students, professionals, and top executives throughout the world on how to start up, grow, and transform their businesses. Many years ago, in addition to his award-winning books, Peck is the host of the popular business life podcast Consulting Unplugged, a no-nonsense, plain talking conversation with entrepreneurs, entertainers, and executives about their secret sauce and related tips for achieving commercial success and ultimately making a positive difference in the world. Wow, that's you have definitely a lot going on for you. I can see that.
Thank you. That was very kind of you to share that. And yes, I am busy.
Well, and I always like to take it back. I love the where people are now. And it always starts with a story. And I always tell people it starts from, where are you originally from? How was your upbringing? Because a lot of that has to do with how you shape up in life. And you go through a lot of ups and downs. And I really want to get to know those things.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that question. I mean, my story begins, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. My parents were immigrants from Hungary. So I'm a first generation American. But I was imbued with a very strong work ethic. As immigrants coming to the United States, they felt, this is a land of the free and the home of the brave, and really wanted to educate me to become, of course, kind and loving human being, but also hardworking, independent, and to pursue my dreams and to be the best version of myself. And do what I could for others and to find my passion. And so they gave me that nice foundation and helped support me through my education. And growing up, of course, in Cleveland, Ohio, a very industrial city, love sports and all those sorts of things. So I was early on involved in a lot of different sports. And then, of course, went to university and studied and eventually got a job working for a very large company called British Petroleum, where I was involved with retail marketing. And that's where I started my career. And then it progressed from there, where I evolved into professional services. So I was a partner at Accenture, large consulting firm, advising top companies, top leaders on areas of business transformation, organizational transformation. Went back into business, went back into industry, I should say, where I was leading then the innovation group at Pfizer Consumer Healthcare, and then started my own business, which I've been doing now for the past 15 years, dedicated to helping build what I call the power skills of the next generation of entrepreneurs, innovators, and change makers. So many of the experiences that I learned in the past, I'm now kind of giving back and help supporting emerging and seasoned entrepreneurs to fulfill their dreams.
Yeah. Talking about that, and for people that want to step into that world of entrepreneurship, for you, at which point did you decide to say, maybe I need to go and venture out on my own, right? I mean, if you're working for a pretty big company, and so what led to say, you know what, this is not for me. I want to kind of venture into my own stuff.
Yeah, that's a great question because I love working with large corporations as well as small and everything in between. And the experiences I, of course, had with some of these larger firms was great because it gave me experience, foundation, confidence. I learned a lot about business and people and organizations. But I probably can owe thanks to my parents for this, independent and creatively minded. And so, either I grew tired of the company I worked for, or they grew tired of me.
Right. Yeah.
And I felt like there was something better, bigger for me independently. So I always had this yearning to do something on my own, which in the early days, I had no idea how hard that would really be. And I have had, different flirtations of that even in the early stages of my career where I did freelance kind of work, kind of getting a little bit a taste of what it would be like to be an entrepreneur. But then when you finally commit to doing it, it's exciting because you're, independent, and it's scary as all can be because now all of a sudden you have nobody to rely on but your own self.
Yeah.
And that's not so easy. So I left the comforts and security of working for big corporations to do something that I really had passion for.
Yeah, and you talk about when you did that. Obviously, it wasn't as easy as you thought it would be, and I know also for me it wasn't when I left my job. Um, what were some lessons that maybe you can share with us from that experience? Right, that if you had to do it all over again, you'd probably do it differently.
Yeah, well, obviously, I when I wrote one of my first books, is called "Stimulated Habits to Spark Your Creative Genius," and Ken Blanchard, who is the author of the 1 Minute Manager, endorsed it. And I remember having a conversation with him, and I asked him, "Well, what the same question you're just now asking me?" And he said, "What have you learned about business?" I asked him. That's important. And I thought he was going to talk about leadership or values or principles, something really esoteric. And he said, "Cash flow." He said, you need the money, you need the support. And I had a great deal of experience around, helping other companies develop their creative and innovative self. But what I underestimated the some of the basics, how to raise money, how to have a steady flow of income, how to have a good business plan, marketing plan. And one of the mistakes I made early, Cesar, in the beginning, is I was so used to being part of large corporations and big consulting firms that I had all sorts of resources at my disposal. But to hire the right people, I didn't do that. I hired some really nice people whom I loved and had great relationships and were talented, but they weren't necessarily the right fit. They were not the right match for what I wanted to accomplish. And back when I first started out, the market crashed in 2008. It was a disaster for me. And my business partner, Janine McGlade, she and I, had all this ambition. We started to hire people, and all of a sudden when the market crashed and we weren't well positioned, things just fell apart. And so we had to sort of regroup and think, what does the future hold, and how do we stay competitive, and how do we evolve in the future?
Yeah. You talked earlier about once you're committed, you have the commitment, and you kind of don't look back or go back, I guess. How do you define commitment? Like, what is the definition for you in terms of commitment and being able to really utilize that word to its fullest to help you move forward?
Well, that's also another great question. Commitment to me is, really staying true to your dreams and your values in an unwavering fashion, but recognizing that along that path to galvanizing your commitment, that's something that you have to do on a day-to-day basis, meaning there are going to be setbacks, there's going to be disappointments, there's going to be failures, many of failures along the way. That's just the reality of the situations. Even just selling work or building client relationships, it's probably at best 1 out of 4. Like a baseball player, the top baseball players only hit the ball a third of the time, right? It's the same thing in business. You have to accept that you're going to have setbacks. But the reason why people abandon their entrepreneurial pursuits is because they have those setbacks. It's not easy. It's hard work, right? But to stay committed means you are believing in yourself and what you have to offer to others, however that looks, whether it's a product or service.
Yeah, and kind of going back to that, you also talk about like on the market crash back in 2008. You obviously had setbacks, you fell apart. At any given point, did you say, you know what, this is not worth all of this or the stress? Or I mean, I know when I started, I started experiencing things that I can never experience in my life, anxiety, all these things like panic attacks. I'm like, I never had this in my life. And it's like, is this my sign to go back? It's like that hero's journey, right? You're going through the hero's journey and you're at that bottom of the bottom, and you can either reinvent and continue, or you kind of go back because of the temptation. um, how was it for you? Obviously you're still doing it. I said, did you had any of those moments, and how do you bounce back if you did?
Oh yeah, and the reality is I did. I ended up building partnerships with other firms, to sort of offset, because the reality is you have a family to support, and all those other expenses or responsibilities that you may have in your life. And you use the word panic attack. I mean, I had plenty of those kinds of like,
Yeah,
holy smokes, how am
yeah,
I going to do this? And especially when you've had real significant, I lost a lot of money. I had to let go of people in my business. That was not easy. And it's a constant reminder that, that is always possible, but you cannot let that distract you from your ultimate goal. And so, and I'm still learning to this today, to be honest with you, is that even when you have those setbacks, what is it that I learned from that, and what can I do maybe differently the next time, right?
yeah,
Is not to just beat yourself up, or say to yourself, or be tempted, like you said earlier, to say, "All right, I should just forget this,"
hmm,
right? Is just to reflect on, all right, what am I learning? How are things changing? What can I do to adapt? What choices do I need to make in order to continue along this journey?
yeah. And talking about that, for you, one of your biggest obstacles really was going broke and overcoming that perfect storm. And
Yeah.
I think that's a very valuable lesson for the listeners, specifically if you're an entrepreneur, is that you are going to go through that perfect storm, or many of those storms, yet the storm is not here to stay, it's here to pass. You just got to be able to go through that and stay through it. And for us, some of us, it could be a week, 2 weeks. I mean, some of us could be a month. A lot of people last year went through that perfect storm, yet they waited out and still are doing something now, right? So um, obviously you talked about bouncing back and forth, and that was one of your biggest obstacles. What were some of the I guess tactics, principles? You said you had to reflect, you have to go back and do that. um, what was that like for you? What were some of those things you actually did?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about it in two aspects, and
Hmm.
this is why I have the kind of programs and offerings that I have to
Yep.
entrepreneurs today. Is it's business currency and social currency. The business currency is really understanding who is it that you serve, what's the value proposition, what's your offering, what's your niche, what's unique about what you have to offer. Again, whether it's a product or a service, and then who is your ideal customer that you try to serve. Really understand what their pain points and gaps are, and find the right match, and obviously a business plan and marketing strategy to attract that. That's the business side, and based on the expertise that I have, the know-how, or what I sometimes refer to as tradecraft. The
Hmm.
social currency is then the relationships that you develop, how you engage with people, how you build trust, how you influence them, how do you get known. I started a podcast, like you and many others have, to communicate not only my voice, but to share the voices of others whom I've had the privilege of working with, or part of my network. And so, the social currency, the more influential you become and confident in your own interpersonal abilities to relate to others, as well as what you know and who you can serve, is kind of the magic combination: business and social currency. then you start to have more consistent, I think, results, right? And then you have, more sustainable sources of growth and revenue potential.
I love that. I love that. No, that's pretty awesome. And these are the things that you obviously teach on your consulting business.
Yes, yes. So for many years, and I still do, I have clients who I advise on their business. These are projects, but then
Okay.
I'm so focused on educating, teaching the skills, much like your podcast and some of the experiences that you've had, which are remarkable and I love, is how do you teach others to fish, right? And so I'm teaching people some of these same lessons so that they don't make necessarily the mistakes that I did,
Got
or
it.
at least minimize them. It's hard to avoid all mistakes, right? That's how you learn. But if you can minimize it, then you're closer to achieving your goal.
Right. And so who are your ideal? Is it people that are already in the business of, or already entrepreneurs, or people that want to become entrepreneurs, or what is the mix?
Yeah, so it's really three sort of segments. There are that I serve the young emerging entrepreneurs who are starting their own business that have very much a client. They may have a product, but they have a lot of strong focus on client relationships. How do they manage the relationships, or advise, or sell work based on the service or product that they have? And so it's people who are starting out, and it's not age dependent, by the way. Many people after many successful years in a career decide they want to do something on their own. I advise people who are mature as well as just starting out in their lives to help support them in growing their business. And then I work a lot with universities or large institutions who are, very interested, educated individuals who are looking to pursue a consulting or entrepreneurial career or start up their own business. I'll work with the university to train some of these students coming out of their undergraduate or graduate program, business or design or engineering, for example.
Yeah.
And so those are my sort of main kinds of clients. And there could be also somebody who's been an entrepreneur for a while, but has plateaued as a business. Like they've done well. Like I work with a couple of firms that have a good steady base of business, almost predictable based on some offering that they have, but they're just static. They're not growing, could easily be disrupted because of new technologies. And so they get concerned that if they don't start to invest in new solutions or new client relationships or new offerings, they may not be there, a few years down the road, for example.
Right. Right. If people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
They can find me on my website, www.andrewpek.com. It's like an all-in-one. Anything you want to know about me and my story and experiences, I have my blog, all my articles, media, and then access to my company, which is DxD Partners, and then also access to my podcasts and educational programs, Consulting Unplugged. It's easy to navigate. You can get a lot of good information there.
Yeah, definitely. Andrew, I want to talk about your book. I think that's pretty unique when people decide to write a book. And so for you, I guess, what was the motivation behind writing a book? And you said how many books do you have now?
I have 4 books that I've written. I'm working on a 5th one as we
Nice.
speak. Yeah, I was always, I have a guitar in my
Yeah.
background
Yeah.
here. It looks as though I'm this great rock star. I'm really not. I've always wanted to be one. Other than a few riffs on the guitar, I don't really have any musical talent. But what I always wanted to be is an original artist, not a cover band, right? I always felt wanted to bring my voice, my set of experiences. Now, of course, it's influenced by other people who've written and taught
Yep.
and had thought leadership around these different topics. So I felt I wanted to write a book, and I was very grateful. My co-author, Janine Glade, who's an excellent speaker and writer who I've collaborated now for many years, she and I wanted to start to write about our experiences around things like creativity, innovation, transformation, leadership, these sorts of topics, design thinking, which is very popular term these days. So I wrote it. It's several books. It's always a hard effort. uh,
Yeah.
it's sometimes lonely, to put your thoughts on down on paper, but it's a wonderful way to express your views and then share your knowledge in hopes that it might inspire others
Yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what you talked about, being able to um, that social currency, right? Being able to get people to know you. You're putting yourself out with podcasts, with books, with all the things that you're doing, so people can get to know who is Andrew, right? At the end of the
Right.
day, yeah. That's awesome. I like one of the things that you talked about here, and one of the things that you want to kind of say to the listeners is love what you do what you love. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, well, I think if you don't follow your heart, I mean, look, there's in business, you got to use your head, of course. You've
Mhm.
got to make rational decisions. You have to assess risks all the time, but you have to pursue what you love to do, what you feel you're called to do. If you don't, either you will fall out of love with what you're doing, or it will fall out of love with you, or you get bored. And so it's so important. Now, many people struggle with that. Well, what is it that I love to do and stuff like that? And I think it takes a bit of time, a bit of experiment to reflect on what are the kinds of experiences, things that you like to do, what brings you fulfillment, where do you feel like you serve the best or deliver impact to somebody else. And once you start to discover that and cultivate that, then just do that. I try to tell this to my kids. I've been blessed to have 4 kids, to encourage them to pursue their dreams, whether they want to be a farmer, a film director, a graphic designer, or an art director. It doesn't matter what they want to do. Ultimately, pursue it because you believe in it, and then the money, the success, the relationships, and the joy follows.
Yeah, I love you mentioned that because a lot of people define success based on a monetary value, right? And people, many people, I won't say everybody, many people see it as if I have money, that means I'm successful. I see it the other way, more so in the sense of I'm successful again if I'm happy doing what I'm doing, if I'm joyful getting up each and every day, whether I have the money or not. As you said, I believe that that's gonna follow, right? Is follow your. I always tell people follow your purpose, not your profits. When you start following your purpose, the profits will come, right?
Brilliant. That's brilliant. And believe you me, I've committed that sin many times. I have pursued just profits at times, and I've
Yeah.
made incredible amounts of profits. I've earned some amazing amount of money at times, but either was very dissatisfied or it wasn't sustainable. And
Hmm.
when I look back at why wasn't it sustainable or why was I unhappy, is it wasn't aligned to my purpose. Always, always that's the case.
Yeah.
And so that's why I use the word currency. Currency
Yeah.
will ultimately translates in the things that you need, and sort of the universe will provide,
Right.
but you have to stay true to that purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely love that. Andrew, do you have any daily habits? Tony Robbins refers to them as rituals. Any daily habits that you practice each and every day to just kind of put you in a positive state of mind or help you stay focused?
Yeah, great question. As a matter of fact, almost every day, almost 365, every day of the year, I do some form of exercise and meditation. I always go out. We just recently got a puppy that encourages me to take that dog out. Who's very athletic,
Yeah.
and I either walk or run or bike, and just first get sort of some physical activity, absorb the sunshine, or even if it's a rainy day, just get out in nature. And
Yeah.
then afterward, I spend some time just meditating, putting myself in a good, what I call high state of a vibration. I'm
Mhm.
trying to attract good feelings about my life, be grateful and the things that I have. And then I'm now ready to start to plan my day, right? Get focused on what I had to accomplish. And then I check my emails. Then I
Mhm.
check my, things that are coming my way. But when I do not do those things, like if I wake up, check my email stuff, I start getting distracted. I get unfocused. Or if it's something that is maybe not an urgent task, I'm like, all right, all of a sudden I'm off my game. To stay on your game, you need to discipline, do some kind of focusing exercise every day.
Yeah.
Physical, emotional, spiritual, psychological.
Yeah, no, and that's the hard part, keeping that discipline and making sure you do that day in and day out, and as many days as you can, right? And
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
yeah, I'm interested on meditation, right? A lot of people have asked me, well, I don't know how to meditate, I don't know how to do it, so I'm always interested to hear from people that do it very often. How do they go about it? Because I know it's very powerful. Yet a lot of people feel like, well, I don't feel anything, I don't see anything, I don't know what I'm doing. It doesn't seem right. And so maybe you can give me a little bit of that. How do you do it?
Well, so I'm not the expert in it, but I'll tell you what I do. But Janine McGlade, who's my co-author, does a lot
Mm-hmm.
of work around meditation. So she's inspired me, on some of those techniques. There's it has to ultimately, I think, work for you. I mean, yes, there are
Right.
maybe some habits that are better than others, of course. But what I do typically is, sound for me is a great stimulus. So I listen to some kind of either chanting or om sound, yoga
Mm,
kind of sounds in the morning. If you take a tuning fork and it's tuned to 450 hertz, and you have another tuning fork next to it that is close by, those two things will kind of harmonize. They will uh, connect with one another in terms of vibrational, actual, physically,
mm,
and that's called rhythmic resonance. Well, when I listen to music, an om chant or some even soft, sometimes classical, sometimes a little bit different, I kind of tune in with that vibrational sound. And so what's helpful for me is then I can concentrate on the present moment as opposed to the chatter that's in my mind and saying,
mm.
I got to do this. I'm running out of time. I'm anxious, right? Or whatever thoughts may be floating in and out. But if I can tune myself into that sound frequency, I can feel my breathing slowing down, being more present, and more clear on what my purpose is.
Yeah.
So that now other people do it many different ways. They silent, they look out into an ocean or trees or forest, or just do breathing exercises to accomplish the same thing. But for me, the soft kind of chanting always really helps.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the key element there that you mentioned. Again, I'm not an expert because I don't really meditate. I do very little of that. Except I think the key element there is that be here now, be present, right? Is staying in the moment right now versus thinking about what happened yesterday, what's gonna happen 5 minutes from now. It's like just being in that moment, and I think that's probably the biggest lesson you got to be able to take away from that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And where it gets challenging, Caesar, is then throughout the day. So you do an excellent job in the morning, let's just say, but then all you need is somebody to cut you off in traffic, or
All
you
right.
get off that your chi, so to speak. Then if you can recognize that quickly, then try to shift your state by either playing some music or just doing some breathing exercises.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I have a couple of more questions for you. One, where can people find your books if they wanted to pick up some books?
Yeah, of course you can go on Amazon. All my
Okay.
books are there. But then on my website, there you
Okay.
get more detailed descriptions. I have other podcasts and blogs about them, so that if they're curious a little bit more about the backstory, they can obtain it and purchase it there as well.
Awesome, awesome. And then for the people that are listening to us, watching this show, if they're going through any challenge, whatever challenge that might be, what is one or a couple of things they can start doing to start overcoming that challenge?
Yeah, which I know is your thesis. I like that. And life, you talked about we talked about storms, right? And
Yeah.
even in nature, storms don't last
Right.
forever. So
Right.
that's principle number one, is to remind yourself that even if there's a storm, it's not going to last forever. So do not get discouraged. Do not feel give up because of that. Try to persevere through it.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. Always go back to, especially when you are faced with some kind of challenge, is to assess the situation. What's going on here? What can you learn? And then I believe and I've obviously written several books on this topic on creativity. Is going out in nature, calling a friend, reading an article, listening to a podcast, something that will trigger the right brain of your beautiful luscious mind to start to get you to look at your circumstance in a novel or new or fresh perspective. Because when you are challenged, oftentimes what that means is you are stuck, you just can't solve the problem, or you're resistant to the change. So to overcome that process, use creativity to sort of unlock a new solution or a new approach. Make sense?
Yeah, no, that definitely. I love that, and kind of reminds me of Walt Disney. I might be butchering the quote, but he talks about imagination is the upcoming attraction of something new coming, or something like that, right? So it goes back to that creativity.
Yeah, beautiful. That's good.
Yeah. So I definitely love that. Andrew, I had a wonderful time. Anything else you want to say before I let you go?
Well, thanks for having me on. First and foremost, it's a pleasure to get to know you. Love what you're doing and inspiring. I think that's so important. Please carry on. Any way in which I can help emerging or seasoned entrepreneurs, obviously they can get in touch with me. I'd love to help them and support them.
Awesome. Well, no, thank you again, Andrew. And for the rest of you guys, do me a favor, check out Andrew at his website. Please make sure you share this message. Somebody needs to hear this. Please comment and give us a 5-star rating. And we'll see you guys at the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Goodbye.
Do you feel stuck? Do you feel like life is against you? Do you feel like you can't get ahead? Well, we have a podcast for you. You can overcome anything with Cesar Espino, real estate investor and real estate coach, NLP practitioner, and author of the book of the same name. Cesar will show you a way to overcome anything in your life through talking with people from all walks of life that have done just that. You Can Overcome Anything podcast available on Spreaker.com.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.